Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back. This is my April wrap-up. Last month, if you watched my wrap-up, you saw that March was actually my lowest average reading month since I started tracking my reading. It was a little bit rough, but April has been the exact opposite. It has been an insane month. I read so much. I had 4 or 5 stars. It's been a crazy successful month. So let's get into it. As usual, I'm going to first go through rapid fire the books that I already covered in vlogs. I will do the little link wherever it is up at the top. So if you want to hear more in depth about these books, you can check out that reading vlog that I read them in. And then after that, I will get into books that I have not talked about yet on this channel. So first of all, I did a reading vlog where I redid, theoretically, my Goodreads votes. I had still some books from the Goodreads Choice Awards last year that I hadn't read that I really wished I'd been able to read before I'd cast my votes at the end of the year last year. So from the young adult category, I read Say a Little Prayer by Jenna Voris, which is about our main character, Riley, who has to go to a church camp for disciplinary purposes, and she decides to try to commit all 7 deadly sins while she's there to prove that the black and white thinking of the pastor is actually quite damaging. Meanwhile, she also has feelings for the pastor's daughter, who is her best friend. So this was really great. I loved it. Gave it a 4.25. I also read And They Were Roommates, which is about, what's the main character's name? Charlie. Charlie goes to a private all-boys school, and he is trans, and he signed up to have a single room. However, he ends up getting there and he's rooming with Jasper, and he met Jasper a few years ago before he transitioned. They had a little bit of a romance, but Jasper broke his heart, and so now he is hoping Jasper does not recognize him, while also battling his resentment and also remaining feelings for him. This was super cute. I gave it a 3.75. From the horror category, I read Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zeng by Kylie Lee Baker. I absolutely love this. One of my favorite books of the month. This was a 5-star. This is about Cora, whose sister was killed in a hate crime during COVID, and she ends up being a crime scene cleaner, and she starts to notice that there is a rise in violent crimes against Asian women, and she suspects there's some sort of serial killer. However, it seems like nobody really wants to address that or look into it. Meanwhile, she's being haunted by a hungry ghost who she suspects might be her sister, and so she's also investigating how to get rid of this ghost. Loved this, loved this. Technically, this was last month. I listened to this at the end of March, but since it was for a vlog this month, I'm mentioning it here. This is Black and Blues, How a Color Tells the Story of My People by Imani Perry. This is a nonfiction, and it basically is just going through from the time of the slave trade up until present day, and explaining Black history through the lens of the color blue. So there's a lot of art involved, music, visual mediums. I really enjoyed this. I love like that kind of like niche topic, but still with a broad history. I thought this was super well done. I gave it a 4.5, listened to it, and then bought the book. Speaking of listening to an audiobook and buying the book, the last book for that video was Woodworking by Emily St. James. And I listened to this on audio and then gave it a 5-star, so obviously I bought the physical copy. This follows a teacher who is in her 30s, and she has recently come to terms with the fact that she is trans, and she hasn't told anyone in her life, and she doesn't really know what to do next. And there is a trans girl in her school named Allison, and so she ends up confiding in Allison, and the two end up being kind of a support system for each other, and they start a friendship, and this just follows their lives and their struggles and their triumphs, and it is really beautiful. I love this so much. There's humor and it's heartfelt, and it is great. Highly recommended. Then for my queer new releases vlog, I read From Hell with Love by Bryce Oakley. This is about Ramona, who is a witch who's down on her luck. So she does a summoning spell that's meant to bring good luck. However, she summons a demon by accident. So as she and the demon try to work together to undo this spell and send the demon back to hell, they end up falling for each other. This is just a really cute, like found family, wholesome, cozy fantasy romance. Oh, I gave this a 4. This is We Call Them Witches by India Rose Bauer. I ended up giving this a 3.25. I enjoyed aspects of this, but the whole thing, the plot, left a little bit to be desired for me. This is about a family in a post-apocalyptic world where these creatures that they're calling witches are attacking and killing anyone they can get their hands on. And one day, this girl who is the same age as our main character, who is 17, shows up outside of this family's home. They take her in, but they're a little bit untrusting. The main character starts to develop feelings for this girl. Meanwhile, her younger brother is taken by the witches, and she and Parsley, who is the girl, end up going on a journey to try to bring her brother back. If you enjoy like zombie post-apocalyptic stories, I think you will enjoy this. I really enjoyed the monsters, but the plot and the romance didn't quite work for me, but it was still an interesting read. Then I read Hail the Rising Tides by Krahen. I absolutely love this. I gave this a 4.75. This is a romantasy. It happens in a high fantasy world with elemental magic where Ayane has the moon goddess's powers within her. However, she's not ever been able to really access them. When she meets Lena, Lena is actually a pyromancer whose family worships the sun goddess, but she escaped from her family and from her temple because she didn't agree with their cruelties. And she is just trying to pretend to be a regular person, just a mortal with no magic. She and Ayane are drawn to each other, but neither of them is completely upfront about their identities. There is magic, there are politics, there's war, there's romance. Also, these two, kind of bodyguard, no magic, very uptight, cocky, magic wielder, enemies to lovers. It's a good time. I go very into detail about this in the reading vlog. There's a lot to cover. So anyway, I can just say this was a 4.75. I absolutely loved it. Highly recommend it if you are into romantasy. Lastly, for that vlog, I read Wife-Shaped Bodies, which I gave a 4.5 and I absolutely loved. This is a literary sci-fi horror. In this post-apocalyptic society, there is this community that we are following, and all of the women have mushrooms growing on their bodies, and the men are all seemingly normal. And our main character is set to marry one of the men, and she starts to learn more and more about the world that she has grown up in. She befriends a woman named Tegan, who is more likely to ask questions about the status quo, and brings our main character along with her as she discovers more and more about the society that she was brought up in. This is a total fever dream, very, very strange. I loved it. Totally my vibes. Highly recommend. All right. Next, for the books that I read for the buzzword challenges this month, for the ordinal numbers prompt for the title prompt, I read The Final Act of Juliette Willoughby by Ellery Lloyd, and this is a mystery thriller that takes place in multiple timelines. We are following Caroline and Patrick, two Cambridge students in the early 90s who are doing their thesis projects about the surrealist movement in the 1930s. Caroline's project is about Juliette Willoughby, who is a female surrealist artist whose work was all lost in a fire, and her history has kind of just been compressed into a footnote. She was the partner of a very famous male surrealist artist, and so people kind of just think of her as his girlfriend and not as an artist in her own right. But Caroline comes across her old journal and starts to investigate the fire that killed her, and she starts suspecting that one of her art pieces actually survived the fire, and so she is determined to track that down. So we're also getting Juliette's journal entries from the 1930s. We're hearing her side of the story. We're finding out what really happened to her. And then later in the book, after we've gone through the 90s timeline, we are in Dubai in 2023, and we are following Caroline and Patrick again, where Patrick has been arrested for murder after selling one of Juliette Willoughby's paintings. I think the first chunk of it, I don't want to say half, I can't really remember what happens at what point in the book, but the 1990s part is a lot more mystery, historical mystery, and then once we're in Dubai, it gets to be more of like a thriller sort of a feeling. I can do mystery without thriller, but I can't do thriller without mystery. So for me, the 1990s timeline and the 1930s timeline are my favorite parts of this. Those parts are like love, 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 absolutely obsessed with, totally my style. And then the mystery thriller aspect in Dubai is still really solid. It's just not like my ideal book, I guess. But the whole thing of finding clues in paintings and the art history aspect, I've mentioned before, I was an art history minor, so I love art history. This is totally up my alley. I love history in general. So just the whole theme of this being about investigating forgotten art, forgotten women in history, looking to a painting for clues, things like that. I absolutely love it. This reminded me a little bit of like a mystery thriller version of The Bewitching, because we have a woman doing a thesis project about a woman in history who has been somewhat forgotten and who has created some art of some sort that has impacted history, but people are not really talking about it. We also have the journal entries of that artist from the 1930s, so that's kind of like a crazy parallel. Obviously, that book is a horror book, like a literary horror, and this is a mystery thriller, but if you like one, I would say check out the other just to see, because there are a lot of similarities, even if the actual vibes are different. This also reminded me a little bit of I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca McKay. It is about a woman present day, kind of looking back on her time in school in the 90s and the mysteries that happened during that time. So the subject matter is quite different, but again, the 1990s portion of this where she's in school and investigating did give me that kind of like literary mystery feeling that I got in I Have Some Questions for You. So those are just two random parallels to two of my favorite books that I noticed. So they're like not like super solid comps, but if you enjoyed this, maybe check those out. If you enjoyed those, maybe check this out. I gave this a 4.5. This is definitely one of my favorite mystery thrillers that I've read. I initially actually liked the paperback cover more because I'm not a huge fan of like photos of people on book covers, like with their face. Like, I'm like, you're not really Juliette Willoughby. There's no pictures of her. What are you talking about? But after reading it, I think this cover really fits the vibes more than the paperback, for what it's worth. Anyway, for the accessories prompt, I read When We Lost Our Heads by Heather O'Neill. This is an insane book. I have no idea how to explain this. I can tell you I gave it a 5. I absolutely loved this. This takes place in the 1800s and it follows the friendship of Marie Antoine and Sadie Arnett. And they're both rich, privileged women in Montreal, and they both have some distinct character quirks. They are both flawed in their own ways, and they're both extremely drawn to each other. I don't even know what to say about this. It's like, seriously, it's historical literary fiction, but it is so much more than that. It is a little bit batshit crazy in the best way. These characters are extremely morally gray. Somehow you're still kind of rooting for them, but you're also like, you're a little bit of a terrible person, but you're still like rooting for their love. I don't know. It's very confusing. There are a lot of layers to this, a lot of nuance. I mean, I think this would actually be a really great book club book. Just, there's so much to discuss about this, because it's like you have women who are being oppressed for being women, but at the same time, they're still oppressing women of the lower class. There's a lot happening. This was like absurd in many ways while still touching on a lot of really real topics. Again, I'm not doing a good job of describing this, but it basically just follows Marie and Sadie and their relationship with each other from childhood to adulthood. It says, traveling from a repressive finishing school to a vibrant brothel, taking readers firsthand into the brutality of factory life and the opulent lives of Montreal's wealthy. When We Lost Our Heads dazzlingly explores gender, sex, desire, class, and the terrifying power of the human heart when it can't let someone go. Yep, much better description than I could give. I just love this. This was just an experience. This was like nothing else I've read. I cannot wait to read more from Heather O'Neill. I thought this was brilliant in so many ways. I wish I could do a better job explaining it. Just read it yourself if that sounds like something that you would be interested in. This was just a ride. This was insane in the best way. And then just for fun, because I had time, I decided to read You Did Nothing Wrong by C.G. Drews. And I've read Don't Let the Forest In and Hazelthorn by C.G. Drews in the past, and I loved both of them, so it was no surprise that I loved C.G. Drews' adult debut as well. This is a horror mystery thriller, kind of. This is about a woman who has some secrets in her past, who is running away from her past. She ends up meeting the perfect man, and she moves from Australia to Virginia, and she moves into this giant house that he inherited from his parents that he is renovating. She has a 6-year-old son, Jude, who is autistic, and she has some struggles raising him that are exacerbated by her own flaws and baggage. And then Jude starts saying that he can hear voices in the walls and that the house wants to eat them. Everybody has secrets, everybody has baggage. Meanwhile, you've got this foreboding kind of gothic feeling, completely insane, beautiful writing. If you like horror, if you like mystery thriller, if you like domestic thrillers, I think you will love this. This was a really quick read, a lot of fun. I mean, fun for horror. I mean, fun because it's just crazy, but also like horrifying. Did I say give this a 4.25? I don't know, but highly recommend. This is going to stick with me for sure. Now onto the audiobooks that I listened to. I listened to Notes on an Execution by Danya Kukafka. I apologize if I said that wrong. This is about a man who is on death row, who has killed some women, and the story is following different women in his life who have been impacted by him and his crimes. It's kind of like a literary crime novel. There's not a lot of mystery. There's a little bit because you don't go in knowing all of his crimes, but it's not really based on the mystery. It's not exactly a thriller. it's really more just like literary crime fiction. I don't know if I went in with the wrong expectations. I understand that this is about the women in his life, so obviously he is going to be the central part of it in some ways because he is what is tying them together. However, every other chapter was his perspective as he is waiting to be put to death. It's like we start off with like 24 hours before he's to be put to death, and then it keeps counting down, which does give the book a sense of urgency and dread. But I feel like it was too centered around him in that way. I feel like it would have been more impactful if we were just following the women without hearing from him at all. Because with everything centering around him and getting his perspective, it felt a little bit too sympathetic to him. I don't know. Maybe I went in with the wrong expectations. Like I said, I gave it a 3.5. I thought it was really well written. I don't know. It left me feeling a little weird in like not the right way. I don't know. Or like not in the way that I thought it was going to. So I don't know. Mixed feelings on that. It is objectively a well-written book though. I also read The Ending Writes Itself by Evelyn Clarke, which is V.E. Schwab and someone else, I don't remember. It's about a group of authors who are brought to this famous author's castle on an island, on a secluded island, and they find out that he has passed away and he didn't finish his book. So they all have the opportunity to write the last 10,000 pages of his book, decide on the big reveal, and then the best one will be chosen, and that person will get a $1 million writing contract, and they'll get to put their own name out there as well as have their ending published in the book. And I really enjoyed the parts about the writing industry, but I found I was a lot more interested in just the fact that the people were authors than I was in the actual mystery of the story, because of course they start dying. I forgot to say that part. They start dying on this secluded island. I was more interested in like, okay, so there's like a young adult author, and there's a horror author, and there's a crime author. Like, how are their endings going to be different? How are their twists going to be different? Like, I wanted to know how they were going to each write their ending, which we don't actually get to see because we haven't read the book that they're writing the ending for. So even if they told us, it wouldn't mean anything. But I found that I was a lot more interested in that aspect than the actual crimes that were happening. So, I mean, it was like a quick read. I ended up giving it a 3.25. It was a fun time, but it was not a love. It was fine. It was fine. I also read an ebook of The Perfect Match by Milena McKay, which is about a novice Cupid who just graduated from Cupid school, and a very famous Cupid who always has the highest number of perfect matches. And they meet at a Vegas convention for Cupids. One of them is all prickly, one of them is a cinnamon roll, and they develop feelings for each other. It's like a contemporary fantasy romance. It gets a little cheesy for my personal taste, but it is still cute. I like Milena McKay's writing. The characters definitely had chemistry. It was a fun time. I gave it a 3.5. There are 2 more books in the series. I think there might be 1 more planned after this. I'll probably read them. They're just short little novellas, and I just enjoy Milena McKay's writing, but I'm not going to prioritize it. Lastly, I listened to We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer, and I already had 3 5-stars. I didn't think we could beat that, and I ended up giving this a 5-star as well, and it's probably my favorite book I've read this year. I loved it so much. It is about a woman who buys an old historical falling apart home in a very secluded location with her partner, and one day this family of 5 shows up at her door, and the father says that they used to live in this house and that he wants to show his family around. Our main character feels very uncomfortable, but is awkward and can't really figure out a good reason to send them away, so she lets them inside, and weirdness ensues. Everything just gets weirder. It's uncomfortable. This book is very reality bending, which I love. I also was really impressed with the way Marcus Kliewer was able to write from a queer woman's perspective. At no point did it feel like a man was writing it, because I feel like there's, you know, those really terrible quotes that you see where it's like a man has never met a woman in their lives and they're just trying to write from a woman's perspective for some reason, and those are just terrible. Then there's like, you know, a step up, which is like, in my head, like Joe Abercrombie, like I read The Devils, and props for making the women like fully fleshed individuals, but they're also just like kind of men again, which is like a good try, you know, like you know what, it's fine. And then you have somebody who really does, you can tell, does their research, speaks to women about the issues that are involved in the story, like Grady Hendrix. I think he does an incredible job writing women, but you can still kind of tell it's a man writing it. But with this, I really honestly would never ever have known. So I think that is like high praise to Marcus Kliewer. Everything about this book was so creepy, so terrifying, so intriguing. I was absolutely hooked. I'm so obsessed with it. I just ordered The Caretaker. I can't wait to read that as well. If there's any other reality bending books like this that you want to recommend to me, please do, because I love it so much. I have to go. I have a lunch reservation. My wife's going to kill me. So I think that was it. I hope I didn't forget anything. I'm sorry if this seemed rushed. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. Please give this a thumbs up. Leave me a comment about anything, any of these books, if you've also read them, what you read this month. And I really have to go. She's going to kill me. Okay, see you next time.